Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. A year late. We've been holding the dinner warm since last year. As is customary, instituted by the Rabbi, that at gatherings that children are present, that the children gather together and recite the 12 Pesukim, the 12 verses, carefully selected verses from different parts of Torah. And as it's known, the verse, Mipi Oilim V'yoinkim Yisadat Ha'ois, that from the mouths of young children we gain strength. And the Rebbe explains that especially in times that we need extra blessing in regard to Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, that it's that much more important that we have children reciting words of Torah to bring these blessings. So we'll have the children come up on the stage to recite the 12 verses, and then we will continue with the program. If you did not put on tefillin yet today, please take the opportunity to do that, and feel free to wash for the hamotzi and grab a seat. If all the children would please come on the stage, we will proceed with the 12 Pesukim. Nachman, you want to adjust it that you can see the kids? Sir, Nachman, du willst auch noch gehen sagen, die 12 Pesukim. Alle zusammen. Thank you to the children. And like we said, the verses of Torah that the children say should bring all the blessings. And they refuah shlema to Yechevet Chana Bazbina in the merit of the Torah that the children just recited. Isaac. When is he leaving? When is he leaving? Continuing on the theme of saying prayers, I'd like to ask everybody to join for a chapter of Tehillim, chapter 20, and I'd like to ask a dear friend of my father and of our family that goes back to before my parents got married even, which I'm sure you'll hear if you haven't already. The Rav of Anash of California, V'Hagolu, Rabbi Schusterman, and the Shliach of Beverly Hills, V'Hagolu, to please come up to say Tehillim and to share some words.
Amnatseach Mizmol David. Yan Chadiyeh B'Yem Tzorosh. Segel Hashem Alei Yaakov. Yesh Lechazuch HaMikedesh Mitzin Tzedekah. Yizkei Kol Mechisecha V'Loch Yidash Nesalam. Yiten Lecha Chilvavecha V'Chol Atzoscha Yimalei. Renan V'Shua Secha V'Shem Aleinu Nidgal Yimal Adnei Kol Mishali Secha. Ata Yadaiti Keshi Adnei Meshicha Yaneu Mishmei Koche V'Gvuris Yesh Aminei. Elo V'Recha V'Elo V'Asus V'Nachnu M'Shem Aleinu Nazkid. Hey Mekovin Afol V'Nachnu Kabin Seidad. Dina Yeshi Amelech Yaneinu V'Yem Kodeinu. There's nothing really too much to say. I mean, there's a lot to say. Anyway, the Yohrzeit, the 14th Yohrzeit, which is the numerical value of Yad. We know the 14 books of Rambam, Yad HaChazaka. Yad means a handle. The handle is not officially part of the vessel, but if you want to hold the vessel, you hold it through the handle. Coming from Matan Torah, from the Yom Tov of Shavuos, the Yohrzeit's a few days after the Yom Tov of Shavuos, and it's in the week of Parshas Nosai. You can find a connection between Rabbi Avremel Olav Sholem his avodah, his work, and the parsha of the week and the Yom Tov of Shuas of Matan Torah. He was what's called Me'uravim Abriyos. Everybody loved him. Even as everybody knows, he didn't always come on time to everything. But even when he didn't, and you were about to kill him for doing it, you still loved him. Because that's what type of person he was. And the Mishnah says, a person that is loved by people is loved by God. And in Tanya the Alter Rebbe says the word briyos doesn't only mean people. Briyos literally means creations, creatures. And the Alter Rebbe says in the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael that Hillel said, Oyevus habriyos, he says many people, they like rich people because they have a lot of money. They like intelligent people because they have a lot of knowledge. The uniqueness of loving another person is loving them just because they are a creation of God. And Rabbi Vremel is actually the unifying force of all different types of people. He got along with the scholars because he was a scholar himself. He got along with the simple people because he didn't look at them as simple people. He looked at them as creations of Hashem. And what he really loved was kids. He loved Jewish kids. That was his whole life. And there are kids that went through his camp system, his Hebrew school, that now are married grandparents. And they still remember the camp Gan Izzy, and they remember the Monica, the Simcha Monica Hebrew school. They still remember it. So obviously he had an impact on all types of people. That's what Matan Torah is all about. In order for God to be able to give the Torah says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged ha'arim. When the Jews came to Mount Sinai, they camped as one individual person. They were so united, the Torah calls them all one person. How can that be if there's so many different types of people? The answer is because we don't look at the external person. We don't look at the money. We don't look at their intelligence. We look at the essence of the person. And that's what the Rabbi Vremel saw in every single Jew. And therefore, it's the 14th Yohrzeit. This is really the handle of his entire life and the life of the hundreds and thousands of people that he touched. So Hashem should help us that the letters Yud Daled backwards is Dai. Daled Yud, which means enough. Hashem should help us that he should be a good Tibetan, a good advocate for his family, for all the people that he touched, and for the entire Klal Yisrael. And he should go up to the heavenly throne and say, Dai, it's the 14th year. Dai means enough. Enough of this golus, enough of this suffering. And Hashem should bring us Mashiach very soon. And then it will be a kitzu v'rananu sheichni ofar. Rabbi Vremel will be back with us in a physical body, together with the Rebbe, going to Eretz Yisrael with the coming of Mashiach. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Schusterman. I also want to mention that we said Tehillim just now, l'schus l'refuah shlema, for a complete and speedy recovery for Rabbi Kiva Gershon ben Rachel Basia. Should be a complete recovery right now. And you're all welcome to join me in saying a l'chaim if you haven't already, or a second if you did already. L'chaim, l'chaim, that we should celebrate only occasions in good health, and like Rabbi Schusterman said, together with Mashiach in Yerushalayim. As the Rebbe instituted, that at these gatherings as well, we include words of Torah, words of tefillah, of prayer, and tzedakah, charity. So on the table there are pushkas with coins. Please make a point of putting in a coin that is there for your disposal. It is a unique privilege of mine, especially coming from the year and a half that we just did, that I have here one of my older brothers, Shliach of the Rebbe to Sumy, Ukraine, who came in special, Rabbi Yechiel Shloima Halevi Levitansky. And he is here celebrating with us. He's a little jet lagged, so you'll forgive him if he says things that are incoherent. He also is coming from Ukraine, where the vaccine is a little different than here. So there also might be some confusion. Please don't judge him. But I will try my best after he speaks to translate anything that you don't understand. But in all honesty, it is a great blessing to have him here, and I'd like to ask him to come up and share with us a few words. Rabbi Yechiel Shloima Halevi, the Shliach of the Rebbe to Sumy, V'Hagolil, and the Sumskaya Oblast. L'chaim.
Good evening, dobry wieczór всем, l'chaim. Można na ruskim? Można na ruskim? Na ukraińskim mowie? It's a privilege to be able to be here for the Yohrzeit. Doesn't always work out this way, because many times the Yohrzeit is after Shabbos, and when there's a Shabbos in between, there's no way to get here. Between Shavuos and Shabbos, it's just practically impossible. So Baruch Hashem, happy to be here with everybody. My brother mentioned L'chaim and Refuah Shalema for Rabbi Wagner, and I noticed somebody sent to me yesterday an article which Rabbi Wagner wrote for my father's Yohrzeit. I don't know if it was written last year or for this year, But he writes an interesting story, which my father would many times relate. So I want to repeat the story and add a little bit of the story which my father would say that he didn't write up. When my father was a bacher learning in yeshiva, I believe it was Tavshin Chaf Beis in 1962 or 1963, and he went home for Pesach, and for whatever reason, he didn't go back to yeshiva after Pesach, and he only came back to yeshiva after Shavuos. So he missed about a month and a half of yeshiva, and he decided that to make up for his lost time, he's going to spend the summer learning in 770, learning in yeshiva, and this is what he made up for himself. At that time, Rabbi Korf, who's the shliach in Miami in Florida, had gone out on shlichus not long before then, and Rabbi Korf saw him in 770, and he said, we're making an overnight camp in Florida. I want you to come to be one of the counselors, learning director. And my father politely declined, saying that I already made up my mind, I'm going to sit and learn for the whole summer. A few days later, Rabbi Korf came again and he said, we really need you. There's not many Bachrim to choose from. 770, then the yeshiva wasn't so big. And he needs more boys. Please, can you come? My father again said, I made up my mind. I missed a lot of time in yeshiva. I'm going to spend the summer learning. And this went on for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. Finally, one Shabbos, the Rebbe by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about summer camps, and the Rebbe spoke about the advantage of summer camps, that children spend 24 hours, 7 days a week within a Jewish environment, and that the effect that a summer camp could have on a child is more than school, etc. After the Farbrengen, Rabbi Korf came running to my father and he says, you see, the Rebbe was speaking to you. The Rebbe wants you to come to camp. My father said there are hundreds, thousands of people by the Farbrengen. The Rebbe was speaking to everybody else too. He wasn't just speaking to me. I already made up my mind. I'm going to sit and learn. So Rabbi Korf said, you know what? Fine. You don't want to come? Okay. But at least you owe it to yourself and to me to write to the Rebbe and ask the Rebbe what you should do. Don't just take the responsibility on your own shoulders. Okay, so my father said, fine, I'll write into the Rebbe. As an extra precaution, he called his parents in Chicago and he said to his parents, I missed a month and a half of yeshiva. I decided I'm going to spend the summer learning in yeshiva. Isn't that what you would want me to do? Of course, sure, you should spend in yeshiva. He says, there's this Meshuggah guy. He wants me to go to camp in Florida or something. Well, what do you think? I should go to Florida or I should sit and learn in yeshiva? He said, of course, you should sit and learn in yeshiva. So he wrote his letter to the Rebbe, and in the letter he wrote, as my father would say, he felt it was a slam dunk that his parents are of the opinion that he should spend his time learning in yeshiva. So on the one hand, he wants to learn yeshiva, and his parents want him to learn yeshiva. Obviously, the Rebbe is not going to say anything different to that. And he gives in his letter into the Rebbe, and he goes back to learning, and he forgot about it. He was sure that the answer was that he should spend his time learning. A few hours later, the Rebbe's secretary comes to him and says, the Rebbe wrote an answer for you. So he comes out, and the Rebbe had taken his letter where he wrote, should he go to camp in Florida or he should spend his time learning in yeshiva, the Rebbe circled or underlined that he should go to the camp in Florida. And the part that he writes that his parents want him to learn in yeshiva, the Rebbe wrote, Betach kishiyiru ba'atzlachasai gam him yaskimu. Obviously, when they see your success in the camp, meaning they will also agree that you should spend the summer in the camp. And this was the push that made him go to that summer camp. And as my father would every year in the Shabbosim leading up to the summer months and during the summer camp on Shabbos, he would always tell many different stories that happened during that summer, the success that they had with the children that were in the camp, to the point that after the summer, when Rabbi Korf was in audience, a yichidus with the Rebbe said to Rabbi Korf that there were 2 summer camps that summer that gave him a lot of nachas ruach, gave him, he was very pleased with 2 summer camps. The summer camp in Montreal, because they added a group of masmidim, they added a part of the camp for older boys to sit and learn in the summer. And the camp in Florida, because the children that went there were from non-observant homes, and almost every child that went to that camp was affected in some way. So there was definitely a lot of success, and there were many stories. And I want to just add one story, which my father would say, that summer was one of the deciding factors for my father to go on shlichus in general, to become a shliach of the Rebbe. And as he would say, that in those years, in the 60s, it wasn't the in thing to go on shlichus, to be an emissary of the Rebbe, to be sent somewhere on shlichus. In fact, in 2004, when I moved to Sumy, Ukraine, my father told me, if you think that it's a crazy idea, or if you think you're crazy for moving to Sumy, Ukraine, I can tell you that when I moved to California in 1967, it was 10 times more crazy, and people were sure that I wouldn't last a few months. I would be back in New York. So it was not the in thing to go on shlichus. And many young bachrim who had just gotten married were not thinking of moving out to go on shlichus. And my father was no exception. That summer, when he was in the camp, he observed Rabbi Korf, who had just recently moved out on shlichus. He was maybe there a year or less. And it was very difficult. The financial situation was very difficult to the camp. Any finances that Rabbi Korf was able to raise went to the camp and for everything that was in the camp. And my father observed that Rabbi Korf would come up to the camp every day, and he would eat. He had peanuts, because one of the things that he was able to do was he had a job. He got a job at one of the kashrus agencies to be the mashkiach for a company that made peanuts. So he would go there and they would give him free peanuts. So he had bags of peanuts, and he would eat peanuts and drink whatever it was that he had, and this was like his meal on a daily basis. So my father said, why don't you sit down and why don't you eat something? So he said, I don't have the finances. On Shabbos, if I buy myself some sardines, some fish in honor of Shabbos, that's luxury. So my father said, I don't understand. Aren't you a shliach? You're a shliach of the Rebbe. how could it be that a shliach of the Rebbe doesn't have everything that he needs? So he said, I'll tell you the truth. It's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's a law in Shulchan Aruch. So my father said, I think I've learned through Shulchan Aruch a little bit, and I don't know of any law in Shulchan Aruch that says that you need to live from day to day on peanuts and not have enough finances to be able to buy yourself food and everything that you need, especially for Shabbos. So Rabbi Korf told him, there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, a law in Shulchan Aruch that says, a person's sustenance, his finances are set aside from year to year. On Rosh Hashanah, the Almighty makes the decision how much a person is going to make for that year. So Rabbi Korf said, whatever I'm going to make this year is already decided. It's up to me to do something in order to get that which Hashem already set aside for me. I have to do something, I have to have some kind of a job to be able to get what Hashem had already set aside for me. But whatever I'm going to get this year is already decided. It's my decision what type of job I'm going to take. I could be the Rebbe's shliach, I could be an emissary of the Rebbe, and that way I'll get whatever was decided for me to get. Or I can go into business, or I can do any other type of a job, and I'll get whatever was set aside for me the same way. And I choose to get whatever was set aside for me by being the Rebbe's shliach. And my father many times said this story, and he said that this was a turning point as a bacher, a young bacher who eventually got married a few years later. This stuck in his head, and he understood this to its core. And for those of us who knew how my father ran his shlichus and everything else around him, they know that he actually lived this and believed in it to the last moment. And he really knew that everything that Hashem wants him to get and the brachas that the Rebbe gives him, he will get. If he needs to have it, somehow he'll have it. And he chooses to be the Rebbe's shliach, and he chose to be the Rebbe's shliach to do what the Rebbe wants and to get whatever he needs to get that way. And on his Yohrzeit, as the Rebbe many times mentioned, that on the Yohrzeit, everything which the person did in his life come to its full strength, and those who were connected with my father, his family, friends, etc., what we can do for his aliyas haneshama, for his neshama, is to continue his work that he did in this world, in this physical world. We're the boots on the ground. We're the ones who are physically here to continue his shlichus. So we should be zeicha to be able to, at least in a small way, continue to do the Rebbe's shlichus, his shlichus that he started, and at least do it in as much as we can, in that way, that we are doing what the Rebbe wants, knowing that we'll have what we need to be able to accomplish it. And I'm sure that he will also intercede on our behalf, be a good better, to be able to give us all the brachas that we need in order to succeed in everything that we need to do. Seid alle gesund. Okay.
So for those that don't speak Ukrainian, he just said, "Yachatel skazat shto sivona u nas." Okay. Yashakoyach. Once again, if you did not get a chance to wash for the Hamoitzi, please take the opportunity. And thank you everybody for joining, whether you're in person or you're online. L'chaim. You can say l'chaim at home as well. We all are with you in spirit. L'chaim. Celebrating the Yohrzeit, I want to wish my mother, soll sein gesund und stark, many long, happy, healthy years with gesund, health, parnasa, wealth, and most importantly, like my father always said, emes Yiddish Chassidish nachas, true Jewish Chassidish nachas from her kids, her grandchildren, and Baruch Hashem, great-grandchildren, and to many, many lange gesunte Jahren. L'chaim. I also want to thank everybody that helped to set up in any way with the preparation of the Farbrengen. A shout out to Rabbi Kohen, our in-house Kohen, and my nephew, Menachem Mendele, my siblings, in-laws, the outlaws. And a special thank you also to Zalman and Esther Roth for helping sponsoring the Farbrengen in memory of Zalman's father, whose Yohrzeit is also tonight and tomorrow, Yaakov ben Zalman Leib, Alav Shalom. So growing up in a Chabad home, traditionally, there is no television, as per Chabad custom. However, there was one exception to the rule. Once a year, as children, we had an opportunity, if you want to call it that, that we watched something on the TV, which was on January 1st, the Rose Parade. As we say, es chato ay ani masker ayoyim. I remember my sins today. God forbid. The reason why was because my father's mother, my grandmother, Allah Shalom, was from Chicago. And when she moved here in her later years, when she moved to California, she had heard all about the Rose Parade. And this was something that she wanted. And being that she was so close to my family, it just happened that her grandchildren joined her in watching the Rose Parade. And so it became a tradition by default that we were able to see it. So growing up, we, at least in my perspective, Pasadena, the city of Pasadena was known for one thing, and that was the Rose Parade. That's it. In terms of Yiddishkeit, in terms of anything Jewish, Judaism, there wasn't anything there. Baruch Hashem, I was wrong, and quite a number of years back, maybe 5 or 6, the Rebbe sent a shliach to Pasadena, and where there's a thriving Jewish community. And we have, Baruch Hashem, today, the opportunity to have the Shliach of the Rebbe to Pasadena, Rabbi Chaim Chanoka, to grace us with some Farbrengen inspiration stories. He had a lot of connection with my father, Alav Shalom. There's a coffee break. That's after. Can't do it when I'm calling him up. So without further ado, Rabbi Chaim Manoka, please come up. Again, l'chaim, and if you're at home, l'chaim as well, double l'chaim because you're not driving.
No coffee break.
20 minutes. We'll make it before Shkia.
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi Levitansky, for the elaborate introduction. If I had to epitomize a truly great person, exceedingly humble, a very accomplished scholar, and yet to boot, completely non-conventional, would be Rabbi Avraham Levitansky. I had the privilege of really getting to know him more so about almost 26 years ago. I knew him beforehand, but in the capacity, I'm not sure what went to what, here. In a more relevant capacity, began about 26 years ago. It was at the time that I was working for Rabbi Naftali Stulin, Chabad Russian program, Sein Gesund und Stark. And I was basically looking to open my own franchise. So I was looking around at different areas where to open a Chabad house. At the time, there was a bit of a lull where there were no new Chabads kind of opening up for a number of years. And I had approached Rabbi Kunin, had a meeting with him, back and forth, yes, no, where, maybe. Bottom line is, it was actually in the middle of the 9 days. I don't remember if it was Zainov or Vavav, somewhere around there. I went to Westwood and had a quote unquote a meeting with him to finally decide what the story is. It's been dragging on for a while. So I sat down and conversed with him over different options and areas. Pasadena was one. He wanted to know why did I choose Pasadena. To be honest with you, I wasn't even sure how to get there. I mean, in those days, it was pre-GPS. I actually bought a map to figure out how to drive to Pasadena. Whatever, I looked into it and it had, Caltech and a university and Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It just seemed like a place that had a lot of potential and really not a lot of close neighbors, that is Chabad house neighbors. So it was kind of fertile ground. So finally, after going back and forth, it was already getting late at night. He gave me his quote unquote, his blessings. So what actually went down is as follows. He went into the back room of his office. If you've been to Chabad at Westwood, he put on the Rebbe's kapata. He owned the kapata of the Rebbe, or owns the kapata of the Rebbe, with a hat and a gartel. And he came back into his office and gave me an entire speech, which began as follows. That, as it was 1967, when he brought out the first shliach to California, and he gave me the understanding of what the idea of shliach, Isa shliach is, one shliach making another shliach, as the Rebbe, I guess, endowed him with the ability to do. So the first shliach he brought out was Rabbi Levitansky. And he told me that a few things that Rabbi asked him to find out about Rabbi Levitansky before he came out here. I may have gotten the order a little mixed up, but one of them was, first and foremost, who his parents are and who his wife's parents are. And in addition to that, does he do what's called the mitach shar, what now they call a release time, or the Wednesday hour, as it was known in its time? It was certainly those three different things, and perhaps there was something else. So then he turns to me in regards to me, he says, well, your in-laws, I know. I married Rabbi Reichik's daughter, the youngest daughter. So you have to know who they were because they lived in California and for other reasons. But my parents, you happen to know my father. They went 770 at the same time. And before he continued, I said, and to let you know, I did release time. So we're good. And then actually, he gave me his blessings. He gave me actually a $20 bill that he once got from the Rebbe and a smack on my back. It still hurts today, by the way, 26 years later, and said, get out of here and go to Pasadena. That was basically his Teiskim L'Shalom, have a nice day. And then he made it clear to me that I will be open by Rosh Hashanah. It wasn't like, maybe you can get it together. You will be open and running by Rosh Hashanah, which subsequently we did. So it was Rabbi Levitansky and Rabbi Levitansky Salang Yorm being invoked, if you will, on my first trip to Pasadena, and has carried me through for many actually years later. So I don't have to tell you, Rabbi, I'm sure, well, you have many of his own kindlach here and 8 o'clock and or 8 o'clock, etc. But he was an exceptional person, beyond being non-conventional, which he certainly was. When you got to know who he was, you realized he had a tremendous academic prowess, a tremendous Talmud Chacham. But if you didn't know who he was on that level, you'd see him. He always seemed like a very jolly, jovial person where he could be wearing a sombrero one day and, I don't know, a baseball hat the next day, doing cartwheels, as you heard, around the shul. Whatever the story may be, just depended on the yontif. If it was Tisha B'Av, they celebrated here a special way. And I don't know if they still do, but in Simcha Monica, the yontif Tisha B'Av is celebrated like no other shul in the entire world. And apparently there's a minute to blow shofar. I don't know if they still do that. You still blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Yeah, okay. So that I knew of. Anyway, it's a little different. So if you walked in, you think it's like, I don't get it. You're used to like this remorseful day full of morose and sadness. You walk in and there's people throwing things at a barrelach or beans, whatever they had here, and blowing shofar. You know what? It's all good. And I have to say, when it came to expressing his joy in life in general, and as a Ivdos Hashem b'simcha, he had it down to a science. Now, the opposite of simcha, I don't know if that was his specialty. It certainly wasn't when he came to ruling and paskening halachas. I'll just tell you on a personal note, my mother, Allah Shalom, passed away, I think about a year before your father. It was her 16th Yohrzeit coming up. So it was about a year and a half, a little beforehand. So I was sitting Shiva in New York, and it was my first go around for Shiva. It was only Shvisim from them. You should know from that. And a lot of questions. I wasn't sure what to do. I'm 3,000 miles away from home. I can't close Chabad down for 7 days because it's just not convenient. I mean, the bills don't get paid by themselves. So first and foremost, I called up Rabbi Levitansky. He says to me, Chaim, go down to your sister's basement and take care of whatever you have to do. It's it's done quietly, privately. You got to run. It's not your shul. It's not your business. You're running it. It's for a whole community. So then fast forward about a little under a month, about a month. And I came back to California. I didn't have a daily minyan. Making a daily minyan in Pasadena was like asking people to go to Mars on a daily basis, which you're probably more likely to do from JPL than go to minyan. So whatever, I figured it's my mother. I want to do my best to make a daily minyan. I made phone calls every single night for 11 months straight and mutchid people to no end to make sure that I get 10 people in the morning at 6:30 to have a minyan. So I knew everybody's schedule. I knew when they were going on vacation. I knew when they went home, not home. You always need an insurance man because invariably someone oversleeps and couldn't make it, whatever the story may be. I spent many mornings waking up people's wives who were quote unquote expecting my phone call when I call somebody up at 6:35, 6:40 in the morning and say, hi, Deborah, did I wake you? Oh, no, not at all. It's like, yeah, she's just waiting for me to call. And then I hear her husband on the other side saying, Deborah, tell him I left. This would go on a regular basis. I was very, very popular in town for a long time. But I have to tell you, it wasn't pleasant. You know what I mean? How much can you mutcha people? They understood coming for a Yohrzeit, maybe Kaddish, Shabbos. Every morning, it was like an unheard of concept. Well, I was determined to make it happen. So, and in my naivete, I figured I can do Mincha Ma'ariv elsewhere, that I was going to get one in Pasadena. So I would schlep every day, often to the Valley or to LA, to try and get a minyan for Mincha Ma'ariv. Now, the reality, it's not my own shul, and you know what LA traffic's like. So it can take you about a day and a half to go from Pasadena to Sherman Oaks during rush hour. And I'm sitting in traffic, I'm sweating, thinking, they're not going to wait for me because it's not my shul. And if I miss it, then I just spent 2 hours driving for nothing. It was killing me, literally. For 30 days, till Shloshim, I finally called up your father. I said, Levitansky, I don't know what to do. I can't do this. It's like consuming my whole day. I got chakras in the morning. I don't have enough pills for the anxiety just to make a minyan in the chakras, let alone Mincha Ma'ariv. So here's how he starts off the conversation. He starts out as follows. He says, Chaim, are you out of your mind? I was like, if you know Rabbi Levitansky, it was like a compliment. Are you out of your mind? I was like, maybe. It could be. I've been called worse things. He says to me, and I don't know, this is not necessarily a lesson for everybody, but in my case it was. He said, there's plenty of letters from the Rebbe to Shluchim Ari Asada, the Shluchim of the Rebbe that are living in outlying areas who either can't or don't have a minyan. And that, first and foremost, I have a brother who lives in New York who was saying Kaddish every day. And secondly, he said, you pay somebody to say the Kaddishim you'll miss. And then he says to me, that Kaddish has a twofold purpose. Number one, it acts as, an aliyas and neshama. It acts as an ascent and consolation to the soul. And he says, and I promise you, you go put on film with somebody, you do some other mitzvah, get a woman to light neshek, that's a greater source of nachas for your mother than saying Kaddish. This is what he said. And he said, and the other purpose of the Kaddish is essentially to act as a consolement to the mourner. And he says, and you'll get over it. That's exactly what he said. And that ended that problem real quickly. So, listen, does that apply to everybody? No, but it was just like typical Rabbi Avraham Levitansky, no holds barred, straight up, get rid of all the frilly stuff. You know what I'm saying? No beating around the bush. And I think ultimately it was greatly appreciated by everybody. So on a personal level, I had a lot of dealings with him, not necessarily for myself, but for others, most of which I cannot To protect the innocent, I cannot talk about. But it gave me an opportunity, and really it was a bracha on my end, to be able to pick his brain on things that most people were not willing to address. If there were different shilas, like questions on halacha, which were off the wall, which are not atypical for a Chabad house. I mean, anybody can say no to anything. You don't have to be a great Rav to say no. To figure out how to make something work, that's what separates the men from the boys, or the rabbis from the rabbis in this case. And that was certainly Rabbi Levitansky. So over the years, having spent time talking to him, and there's a lot of Rabbanim who are blessed with great knowledge in the 4 sections of Shulchan Aruch. And I don't mean to belittle anybody, but not everybody has that same gift of understanding the 5th section of Shulchan Aruch, which is a section of common sense. How to use the halacha and apply it to the individual to whom you're speaking and to whom's asking the question. And he had this amazing ability to be able to hone in on that particular person or that particular person's issue, which was unique in his or her own right, and be able to come up to a proper understanding and doing his utmost to make life as palatable as possible within the context of Torah. And I have to tell you, he had an amazing imagination, halachic imagination, I have to say. He did, and at times he told me he would confer with his father-in-law, Olav Hashem, Rabbi Hendel, when things were like really dicey. But on a number of occasions, I had shilas. I asked some other people, and they told me, go ask Rabbi Levitansky. He had somehow the shoulders to deal with issues that many people don't want to deal with, whether they were questions of mamzerus, potential problems of a kid being a mamzer and an illegitimate child, yuchsin, person's pedigree, Jewish, not Jewish, married, not married, they are married, they could be married, you want to marry, a lot of these things were very gray areas in some people's lives, and somehow he hit the nail on the head. He figured out how to make it happen, more often than not. I'm told back in 1959, which I don't remember as well as 2021, but in 1959, Rabbi Levitansky, who was still single at the time, went into Yechidus, a private audience with the Rebbe. I think it was before the summer, where he was going to travel with his family back to Chicago from New York, where he lived. And he went into the Yechidus, and whatever he spoke about with the Rebbe, I don't know, but nonetheless, every so often, in the midst of the Yechidus, the Rebbe would say in Yiddish, "As the Rebbe should helpen, that God should help, that should have a healthy summer." And just like surreptitiously in the middle of sentences, the Rebbe again, the Rebbe should help, and God should help, you should have a healthy summer. Subsequently happened 4 times, just what seemed to be out of the blue and random times. And needless to say, Rabbi Levitansky was a little baffled by why would this be part of whatever the Yechidus conversation was. But so it was, finished Yechidus, and subsequently drove back to Chicago with his parents and his brother. They stopped in Cleveland where his uncles, I guess, were living, and I guess his father found out his uncles weren't that well. And then on the drive out of Cleveland back to Chicago, apparently they hit a horrible rainstorm, like a blinding rainstorm where there was just torrents and torrents of rain coming down, couldn't see in front of the windshield. At some point, the driver, I assume was his father, I don't know, lost control. And the car basically kind of spun out, hit a guardrail, flipped out, went into a ditch for I don't know how many hundreds of feet, ultimately hit a boulder of sorts, flipped apparently, and landed in oncoming traffic. The odds of surviving something like that, this is probably pre-seatbelt, certainly in the back seats, I don't know about the front, but 1959, there are definitely no seatbelts in the back. And all 4 of them walked out completely unscathed. So at that moment, it all of a sudden occurred to him what the Rebbe was telling him. The Rebbe said 4 times during that audience that God should ensure that you'll have a healthy summer. For him, his mother, his father, and his brother. It all came to a 4. And as I understand and heard the story, I mean, this was obviously a clear message. Here, the Rebbe basically saved his family's life, his own life. I'm not sure where you heard from his son as to what was the impetus of his going on shlichus and the decision to go in that direction. But I have no doubt that had a very strong impact on his life. And I can just tell you from what I knew of him, the little I knew, he was a man who was completely devoted and dedicated to the Rebbe. I mean, hook, line, and sinker through thick and thin. While in his own observances of Yiddishkeit, he was about as strict as they come. I have yet to meet someone else that had the chumras that he had, the stringencies that he took upon himself But with all of that, he never imposed it on somebody else. Whether the things that he would eat or not eat, I'm not sure what hechsher the peanuts were under. I'm sure it was the best hechsher though, okay? But maybe when he graduated from peanuts, he went on to other foods. Whatever it was, he was extremely scrupulous, I happen to know, in what he ate and what he didn't eat. But beyond that, and it's just in terms of his Avodas HaKodesh, the way he served the Eibishter. Now, granted, his schedule was a little different than most others. Time was a relative concept. You know, we'll leave it at that. Time was a relative concept. So relatively speaking, though, there was always time in the day for him to be able to spend the requisite amount of time to help people out. I mean, I would call him sometimes fairly often. I know he was busy. I didn't want to be a burden on him, so I called him back in an hour, 2 hours. He always had, like, there was always people coming in and out, and the phone was probably ringing incessantly, not giving him much time, to daven, to eat, to sleep, you know, some basic necessities in life. Somehow he juggled it all. I mean, even if it meant to going to other people's simchas, Baruch Hashem, they were, I assume the Rebbitzin and her husband were invited to many, many, many weddings, bar mitzvahs. It's not easy. I mean, I'm sure they like to be by everything, but at some point, there's only so much you can do. I just know of a few instances where he really pushed himself to be able to go to events. I'm just speaking to a classmate of mine on the way here, Rabbi Megalnik from Chabad at Palos Verdes, who told me, yes, he remembers that Rabbi Levitansky came to his son's bar mitzvah, Yitzi Megalnik's son's bar mitzvah, not a whole lot before he passed away. And he was evidently not feeling that well. But he really made a very strong effort to come to celebrate the bar mitzvah, to see Yitzi Megalnik's father, who was a contemporary of his from back in the day. Why? It made people happy. I mean, I can't speak to what his intentions were, but I mean, he knew it was important for them that he showed up and he was there, as difficult and as demanding of his time it may have been. I'm not sure what my cutoff is. For my brother-in-law, it's 2 minutes. So in the last 2 minutes of section A, at least I got that straight. You know what? We'll resume after Mincha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Anoka. For those that didn't have a mincha, there will be a minyan in a moment in the front, a minyan for mincha. Those that didn't get a chance to put on tefillin yet, you still have a few minutes, many minutes in Simcha Monica time, and the main course will now be served. We'll resume in a few minutes. L'chaim, and for those at home, l'chaim twice. Like we said, you're not driving. Mincha is in the front, yeah. L'chaim, l'chaim. Rabbi Enoka mentioned when he was Farbrengen just before that he would regularly call my father at many or all hours of the day or night. And truth be told, he definitely wasn't unique in that. This was very common. And as I shared this story, and I like to share it all the time because it brings out this uniqueness and the point that he made. When I was a yeshiva student, I was learning in New York in yeshiva, and I do not remember which Yom Tov, which holiday it was that I had come home for, but as was tradition in our home, that thank God there were many children, that once you left to yeshiva, you went to the dormitory. When you did come home, you did not have a bed to sleep on. It was already taken over by somebody else. So you had to figure out your accommodations, wherever it would be, on the couch, somewhere. So I happened to be sleeping on the couch at that time. And as I recall, it was 2, maybe 3 in the morning, and the phone rings. And you have to put into perspective that here's a teenager, a yeshiva student coming from a number of months from rigorous study in yeshiva, and now he has the opportunity to sleep, and the phone rings at 2, 3 in the morning. The reaction is not very pleasant. Anyway, I pick up the phone and I answer hello in this not pleasant voice, and the person on the other end of the line says, "Is Rabbi Levitansky home?" 2 in the morning. So I say, "Yeah, he's home. Obviously, he's sleeping." So this guy on the other end of the line says, "Okay, can you tell him when he wakes up that so-and-so called?" I say, "Yes," and I hang up the phone. Quite annoyed, I go back to sleep. Get up in the morning, and I'm going with my father to Shacharis at 7 in the morning. And I tell him, "By the way, last night at 2 in the morning, this guy called for you." So he says, "And And I, I took the message and I hung up the phone. Because and why didn't you wake me up? So I said, wake you up. It was 2 a.m. And I will never forget the look on his face, how serious he got. And he says to me, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. If somebody's calling for me at 2 a.m, he needs to speak to me at 2 a.m. Next time, wake me up. And to add insult to injury, or to add salt to the wound, he tells me, for your information, the gentleman that called at 2 a.m. got married last night in New York. And he obviously had a concern that he needed help with, and that's why he was calling at 2 a.m. Make sure you wake me up next time. So it was a lesson in life, but it was not just a lesson in life, it was a moment of like an eye-opener, even if you're living in that experience where you saw it and you lived it, how it wasn't just people saying, yeah, I called him at any hour of the day, but he truly wanted and cared for that call at those times. Anyway, I'm going to stop with my Farbrengen, and I'm going to ask Rabbi Hanoka to continue. L'chaim, and again, all those that are home, l'chaim as well, double l'chaim, and we should merit to only share in good occasions.
This is part 2. 16 years ago, 2005, on Hanukkah, you got to realize my last name, although it's anglicized to Hanoka, but the Hebrew last name is Hanukkah. So if there's one holiday in the year that really speaks to me, I think it's self-understood to be the holiday Hanukkah. As with any good Chabad rabbi, when it comes to Hanukkah, what are we into? Making big menorah lightings, as they do here. I think you light at least hundreds of thousands of menorahs somewhere in the promenade or whatever it is, 3rd Street. Okay, we're you don't quite have it on that level, but nonetheless, since I moved to Pasadena, we've always done a large menorah lighting at the mall or a city hall, whatever the story was. So I'll go back 16 years ago, and at the time I was lighting a menorah, what was called the Paseo Colorado, what is called the Paseo Colorado. It's the largest mall in Pasadena, a newer mall. So Kedaki B'Kodesh, I waited till probably like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before Hanukkah to inform management that we'll be back this year as well, as opposed to asking for permission. And I call up, I've got her first name, last name was Dunn. She was the general manager of the mall. I come down to meet her. She says to me, Rabbi, I'm sorry, but this year we can't have you light the menorah. I said, I don't understand. We were here last year, the year before. She says, no, there's a new policy in the mother company called Developers Diversified. They're not allowing any religious symbols to be displayed on their properties. I said, it's been argued in the Supreme Court, Pittsburgh. I started making stuff up because I didn't remember it all by heart. I'm throwing out names now, Lewin, Pittsburgh, whatever, I know. You hear the stuff, you read tidbits, so I figure she's not going to know anyway. Bottom line is, Sinishka Holfen. She said, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. This is the policy, and we're not going to change our minds. So at this point, I was a little upset. I said, I don't understand. You have this like 40-foot kratzmach tree outside of your offices here in the plaza. What is that? Oh, that's not religious, that's festive. Oh, that's festive. Well, the menorah is also festive. I said, it's not really religious. It's a festive symbol that we have. Sinishka Ganyan, she didn't buy it. And she refused to back down. So I was pretty down and out, all said and done. And I tried calling everyone I knew in town, trying to find another place to be able to light the menorah. At this point, it's only a few weeks to Hanukkah, and for every place I tried, there was another reason why it didn't work out. This one, it was booked already, there's no room, we wish we could help you, you have to call us earlier. Every excuse from A to Z and back, I heard. So now we're down to less than 2 weeks of Hanukkah, and I was just having not one of my finer moments. So I remember I sat down in my office and I had a conversation with the Rebbe. I had a big picture of the Rebbe sitting in front of on the wall in front of my office. And I basically told her, I said, listen, Rebbe, this is your house. It was a heart-to-heart talk. This is your house. This is your mitzvah. This is your project. This is what you want done. I don't know what else to do. If you want it, make it happen. I don't know what to do. So after I finished my therapy session, I called Rabbi Levitansky. I said, Rabbi Levitansky, this is the story. I'm in a bind. I don't know what to do. My only option, viable option, is to light it in the Chabad House parking lot, which is really glorious. It has some asphalt and some dirt. You know what I mean? It's horrible. Why would I want to light it in the Chabad House parking lot? But I have no place else to go. I said, I would light it there as a statement. We're doing it here because we can't do it in the mall. And they won't back down. He says, light it in the Chabad House. Okay, that's what the rabbi says. Das Torah. So it is. Print up a flyer, big Hanukkah party, music, blah, blah, blah. Chabad House parking lot. And I'm not excited about it, but it's the best we can do. So about, it was the night before, or 2 days before Yutas Kislev. I'm giving a JLI course. And one of the women, and at the end of the course, I said, you know, this is what's going on with the mall. You know, you should express your outrage. Why don't you write letters to the media, the papers, a tumult, something. I was bothered by it. So one woman, incidentally, her last name is Kunin, unrelated, by the way. I had, unbeknownst to me, decided to write a letter to the Pasadena Star News. That's our local paper. So it's Yotes Kislev. I remember I was teaching in the girls' high school, and at the time, Beis Chana. And I get a phone call from Pasadena Star News. They said, can we come down? We want to do an interview. You know, we send a photographer and someone to interview you at whatever, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, can you make yourself available? No problem. I rushed back to Pasadena. And my problem was that, you know, you need a menorah for a prop. They're coming with a photographer. Now, the menorah we lit weighs about 1,000 pounds. It's made out of steel, and there's no way I can get it out of the garage in the amount of time that I had to make a proper prop. So I had one of those 6-foot menorahs, you know, they have in the stores, whatever it is. I schlepped a 6-foot menorah out of the garage. It's dusty, you know what I mean, from a whole years of sitting there. And I find a bag of bulbs, which were listed under B, an alphabetized system in the garage. Joking. I had no idea where the bulbs were. I'm searching all over the place. I finally found one bag of bulbs. Half were broken, half were working. I grabbed it because the photographer was coming in a couple minutes. I run it into shul. I screw in all the bulbs. I plug it in. Literally 2 minutes before the reporter shows up. My mazel, one bulb doesn't work. So I got like, out of 9, including the shamash, 8 lit, 1's out. I'm like, come on. I mean, it just looks bad, you know? But there was no time to do it. I couldn't go find more bulbs. I didn't know where they were, and it wasn't going to happen. So sure enough, they come in, they run. I express my outrage, you know, the injustice being done against Chabad of Pasadena and the menorah, blah, blah, blah. They take a picture. Now, just because they come to interview doesn't mean they're going to publish it the next day. So Chav Kislev, this is Yotes Kislev. Chav Kislev, I'm walking to shul at a minyan in the morning. There was a paper stand on the corner by my house. I figured I'd take a look, you know what I mean? So I look in the window thing, and the entire front page, you know, when they fold over the newspaper, the entire front page is an article about us, and with a picture of me standing in front of the menorah, one bulb evidently out. And what is the caption? Menorah lights out. I'm thinking, genius. I mean, who thinks about these things? It was a great concept. Menorah lights out. And sure enough, it looked like the menorah lit out. So I read the article, they wrote the whole thing. We go to Shachris. Right as soon as Shachris is over, I got a phone call from KNX 1070, the news station. They saw this thing from the Pasadena Star News. Can they do a live radio interview at like 8:23, whatever the time is? So I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm not the big media expert here, but a radio interview I can handle. So sure enough, at 8:23, whatever it was, I'm in my office. I remember I had a horrible cold, I was sick, coughing, and whatever it is. I do my radio thing, and again, I'm expressing my outrage. There's certain buzzwords apparently you have to use. It's in the Chabad House Dictionary when these things happen. So I express my outrage and disappointment and whatever other various, I don't know, the adjectives I came up with. And within 10 minutes of doing that radio thing, every major TV station in the LA area was calling me to come down to do an exclusive. You know, channel 10, Fox News, channel 2, 9. At this point, my head is spinning. I'm like, okay, this is way out of my league. I don't, you know, not the television personality. Yeah, so I said, okay, you come at 9 and you come at 11. At some point, I forgot who I told to come when, honestly. So they doubled up. So sure enough, within a short amount of time, the Chabad House parking lot, which was not that large, became a media circus. They come in with their trucks, you know, they put up their 40-foot antennas coming out of the van, you know, broadcasting live from Chabad Pasadena, and the whole thing. Then I'm going from station to station doing my shtick, expressing my outrage. You know, how you talking? How could they? The menorah and the kratzmach trees, they call it a festive thing, and it's not religious. and religious persecution and whatever, Pittsburgh and Mount Lewin and everybody else. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, at the same time, they sent other TV trucks to the mall itself on Colorado Boulevard, where the Rose Parade happens to run down, for those who happen to have watched it. And they're interviewing shoppers. Now, this is a couple days to Kratzmile. So this is kind of a busy shopping season, you know, somewhere close to December 25th. And they're telling the shoppers, by the way, you know, that this mall is not allowing the Jews to light their menorah. And all of a sudden, what is the response from the Goyim, I might add, was, if that's the case, we're taking our business to Arcadia to Westfield Mall. We're not shopping here. So at this point, the shopkeepers are watching this live. Okay, this is going on live TV in their stores, and they're livid. It's like, what out of their minds? This is our busiest season. Let them light whatever they want to light. You know what I mean? What are you, crazy? So I guess they're calling first the general manager and livid. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you're ruining our business. They apparently were calling the mother company. I didn't know all this was going on. Shots Meiser. There was a third series of TV trucks that went to visit the probably most well-known Galach, one of the priests in Pasadena. Ironically, his name is Reverend Bacon, very appropriate for a Galach, an Episcopalian from the All Saints, you know what? And they went down to interview him also. And apparently he was incensed and outraged over the fact that they call the Kratzmach tree festive and it has no religious, connection. So you got the Jews mad, the Episcopalians mad, the shoppers mad. In the meantime, I'm in Chabad's parking lot, still running between trucks. Someone runs out of my office, it's probably like 11 o'clock in the morning, and says, Rabbi, the assistant vice president of marketing from the mother company Columbus is on the phone, needs to talk to you immediately. I said, you know what, tell him I'm busy, I'll call him back later. Ich geschwitzt. Well, schwitzen, you know what I mean? Wait a little while, it's okay. I'm in no hurry. Right now, the ball, it was in my court and not his. So I waited about 2 hours until I called him back just to make sure that it will get out to as many stations as possible. Unbeknownst to me, AP, Associated Press, picked it up. So it ran like all over the country to like the Chattanooga Gazette, must have been a slow day in Tennessee, to reporting about a menorah in Pasadena and various other, it's all on Google. There's like a list of newspapers that carry the articles. I don't know what their kesher was. So I called the guy back finally after 2 hours. He said, oh, Rabbi, thank you so much for calling. You know, there was a major misunderstanding. I said, oh, really? What was the misunderstanding? He says, you know, we have no such policy. Of course, we want you back. We would never do this. I said, you know, does it say stupid on my head? I mean, really? This is your general manager of the property. She's not the sanitation department. She's not. She herself told me this is, you know, no, it was a mistake, misunderstanding. We would never have such a policy, never had such a policy. You know, what can we do? I said, you know, I got to think about it. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do anymore because this is on Thursday. The menorah lighting was on Sunday. I said, you know, it's going to take an awful lot to be able to move the menorah. We advertised already. So he says to me, I said, it's probably going to cost a lot of money. He said, how much is it going to cost? I'm thinking off the top of my head. I said, well, I know I needed $5,000 the next day. I happened to know to pay the mortgage. So I said to him, it's probably going to be at least $5,000. I mean, you know, we have to re-advertise it. We only have a day. We have to get a truck. It's very heavy. He says, hold on. 30 seconds later, Rabbi, we're wiring $5,000 to your account right now. Can you get the menorah there for Sunday? I was, at this point, we can probably do it. I mean, it's difficult, but imagine we can do it. I also tried, under Rabbi Kunen's instruction, to get them to be maskim, to agree to, in writing, allow all of their properties, they own like 50 some odd properties in the United States, the mother company, to allow them to have menorah lightings. This they were not willing to do in writing. I was thinking, there's no way in heaven they can do anything in writing because they would deny it ever happened. That didn't happen. $5,000 came in within an hour or two. I was stupid. I could have asked for $15,000. Probably would have gotten that also, but I didn't know. So I come back out and I tell the media, the press, okay, we have very good news. We've made we've made a b'shara. We reached a happy conclusion. The menorah lighting will take place on Sunday. And tomorrow morning, Friday morning, at 8 o'clock is going to be the moving of the menorah ceremony, which is nonsense, okay? Let figure, what the heck? They're all there anyway, and they're buying everything. So I didn't know if they would buy it. So sure enough, the next morning at 8 o'clock, I'm there. It's me, my nephew, Label Pinson, who was like 14 at the time. Our janitor was a big black guy, nice guy, Anthony, the only black guy I know who couldn't dance, okay? But a nice, good chevmanchik, strong. It was the three of us and one other guy. We're bringing the menorah, which weighed a lot, to the mall. I come there, and to my horror, there's 4 TV stations waiting for us to show up with the menorah. I'm like, I can't believe they did this. I mean, moving of menorah ceremony, talk about not believing what you read in the press. This is, I was shocked. I'm like, this is a problem, guys. We got to make something. They're here. I mean, I'm only 4 guys. So we get to menorah, and my mazel, of course, there was leftover kerosene in the menorah from the year before. So we inverted it. It spilled all over my shirt and my pants, like as things should happen. And then after that, so we have to sing. So we're in a circle. It's me, Anthony, James, my nephew, one of the guys, singing Didan Notzach in a circle, running around the menorah for 5 minutes. They did their thing. Sure enough, showed it on live television all over the place. Published again in the Pasadena Star News on their front page. And I'm like, I mean, you talk about having things happen which are out of your control and beyond your imagination. This was going somewhere. So then I told him, by the way, on Sunday is going to be the actual lighting at the mall over here. And we're going to have the mayor. The mayor, incidentally, at the time, was a Goyish guy, but a really nice man. Tall, lanky, Goyish guy, who tried to mediate between ourselves and the mall. Wasn't happy over the fact that the mall wouldn't capitulate, wouldn't back down. But legally, he had no sway over them because it's private property. So I called him up and I said to him, Mr. Mayor, whatever it is, we're having the lighting. I want you to come. He's coming, no problem. Sunday, we're going to have a party. I needed some help at this point. This is going to be like a large lighting beyond my normal, whatever it is, 50, 60, or 100 people show up. So I called the Bachrim I must have paid off the Rosh because there's no way you would allow them to come other way. I don't know. Somehow I convinced the Rosh to allow the Bachrim to come. It's because normally, it's got to be an act of Congress. He allowed them to come. So I had a bunch of Bachrim showed up. And then the conservative rabbi at the time wanted to show allegiance with Chabad and suffering the Jewish people. So he brought himself and some of his flock, etc. So we come there and there's probably 300 people. It was a good size oilam. We got a band and everything like you normally do for menorah lighting. So we get up and you do your announcements and then the music starts. So, you have the Bachrim dancing like Bachrim dance, in a nice, calm, orderly fashion. I turn around, all of a sudden I see one of the Bachrim put the mayor on his shoulder. You know who the mayor is. Okay, he has the mayor on his shoulders. He took his hat, the Bachrim's hat, slapped like a schlopper, like crooked on the mayor's head, and spinning him in circles. Goyim don't do this. You see, for us it's normal. Weddings, you spin. I don't know. I guess they don't do this at Goyish weddings. And the man, he's like the deer in the headlights, like this. He's holding on for dear life. He's a man in his 70s. And the Bacher is just swinging. I'm trying to tap the Bacher. I'm saying, okay, just put him down. So he said, no, Lebedik. And he's like ignoring me like I don't exist. In the meantime, the mayor's wife, nice lady, is standing there. I thought she was going to have a coronary, okay? She's watching her husband being spun in circles. A poor man is holding on for dear life with a strange black hat on his head and his eyes bugged out. Finally, the Bacher lets him down. The poor guy is like unsteady in his feet. You know what I mean? He's not a young man. And the TV cameras are there. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had him come up. I think I had him light the shamish, whatever it was. So my mazel. So then, and they carried this all on live television. All the stations picked it up and the newspapers, etc. The LA Times picked it up as well. What picture did they decide to use to depict the wonderful event on Sunday? One with the mayor on top of his Bacher's shoulders and his schlopper like this. That was, the uftu. So, it was like almost being like in a dreamlike state for time. All to the credit, by the way, of Rabbi Levitansky's wise advice. Just do it. You know what I mean? I don't know if God spoke to him at the moment. I guess he did. So Hanukkah's over, and I'm on a high. And all of a sudden I get phone calls from a lot of shluchim who had trouble with the menorah lightings in whatever, their cities and malls. How did you do it? What'd you do? What'd you say? I said, it's very simple. I sat down and I had a heart-to-heart conversation with the Rebbe. I was pretty down and out that day. Then I called Rabbi Levitansky. And that's how it happened. They said, oh, really? What'd you do? I said, that's exactly what I did. I did nothing more. And they're having trouble digesting. What do you mean that's all you did? You had to have done something. You must have written letters. You called politicians. I said, I called nobody. It's exactly what I did. I had a heart-to-heart with the Rebbe. I called Rabbi Levitansky. I followed what he said to do. And the rest was totally out of my hands. So it's a true story. You can look it up online. It's all published. So, and I think to myself, what did I do? I'm no one special. I put my pants on one leg at a time like anybody else. It's like, why, Lama Zachisi, why did I get this honor of this event? I have no clue. But I will tell you, and I think this is something which is emblematic of Rabbi Levitansky's life and shluchim in general, is that more often than not, things don't make sense. They don't line up. They don't add up. They certainly don't add up financially. You know, we do what's called creative financing or faith-based checking. You write the check, you have faith that God will cover it. There's various different modes of keeping your mitzvah going. And somehow or another, it happens. Now, you can't just sit back on your laurels and say, all right, let it happen, bring it on, I'm good. You have to bust your chops, you work hard, you schwitz like anyone else. But sof kol sof, bottom line is that the successes that you see in your shlichus and your avodas hakodesh are far and beyond your normal capabilities. So since my time slot is coming to an end, I want to conclude with the following, that this is not something which is reserved strictly for the Rebbe Shluchim, because the reality is, by extension, osmosis, mitosis, meiosis, whatever you want to call it, you're sitting in this room, automatically gives you this inherent, innate, or inexorable connection to the Rebbe. You wouldn't be here otherwise. And therefore, the mandates that the Rebbe has given us over the generations, whether the various mitzvahs or other things, all belong to every one of us the same way as Torah came from Sinai, and we all got an inheritance of it. So in turn, what do we need to do? And I think what would give Rabbi Levitansky's neshama a tremendous amount of nachas, li'ilui nishmasa in his memory, is to find a particular mitzvah, a campaign of the Rebbe that either speaks to you or you have difficulty doing. And even if you get one more person involved, whether it's lighting Shabbos candles, putting on tefillin, giving tzedakah, mikvah, svarim, whatever it is, there's 10 of them to choose from. No doubt this will help to give, as he told me when my mother passed away, that'll give her a greater aliyas in the neshama, more so than the Kaddish. So I have no doubt the same applies reciprocally, and that the Eibusher will benchen the ganze mishpacha. God should bless the entire family. No doubt being a true source of nachas to Rabbi Bremel and to his Rebbetzin, Salangi Yorin, and we should be zeicha to be kitzu v'ranu sheikh neyafar. The Mashiach will come. We'll be reunited with all of our loved ones here physically. B'meher v'yameinu amen.
Yeshkoyach Rabbi Hanoka, L'chaim. Very, very quickly, we will be soon davening Ma'ariv, the evening service, and we will be needing 6 minyanim. So please hang out for another few minutes to help us complete all the minions. Before this, I'm going to ask my oldest brother, the Bechor, the Marada Asra, Rabbi Isaac Alevi Levitansky, to please come up and make a conclusion of a tractate of the Talmud, and we'll be saying the Kaddish afterwards. And after the Kaddish, there's a special presentation video, which will be followed by Ma'ariv, dessert, benching, and Farbrengen. Rabbi Isaac, please. And we'd like to wish him and his wife, Zolzain Gesund, Arichas Yom Shana Tevis, long, healthy, gesunde years, and all the brachas of Geffen, L'chaim. Chaim. As customary on a Yohrzeit, to try to make a siyum, a conclusion of a tractate. Make a siyum tonight on the tractate of Makis, which speaks about the lashings that were given. It speaks about the Yarei Miklot, cities of refuge, and other things that it's spoken about in this Masechta. And towards the end of the Masechta, the conclusion of the Masechta, we speak about the story of Rabbi Akiva and the other Talmudic scholars that were with him when they went in the streets and heard how the Romans had a big Farbrengen, a big gathering, and how they were loud and were having a good time and so on. And to this, Rabbi Akiva's colleagues were very unhappy about this and said that how terrible this is, that this is a chilul Hashem, this is something which is a disgrace of Hashem's name, that those that destroyed the holy Beis HaMikdash should be in such a state that they should be able to have all of their physical luxuries and to enjoy it, and so on and so forth. And Rabbi Akiva laughed. And when they asked Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? They cried, and he laughed. They asked Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? So he said, why are you crying? They said, why are we crying? These people that did such terrible things have such a good life. It's a terrible thing. It's a chilul Hashem. It's a disgrace of Hashem's name. And in the Mefarshim, they explain that what hurt them more was not that the Romans destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, because this was for the honor of the Jewish people, that it was done by a great kingdom. The Romans were big and they were great and so on and so forth. Had the Beis Hamikdash been destroyed by some little army, it would have been a bigger shande. But this, what hurt them was that these are the people who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and yet they lived a life well and good and so on and so forth. And this was very hurtful to them. And to this, Rabbi Akiva said, that's the reason I'm laughing. That's the reason I'm happy. If Hashem gives to those people who did such a terrible thing as destroying the Beis Hamikdash, that they have such good physical and so on and so forth, for sure for the Jewish nation that follows the Torah and the mitzvahs and so on and so forth, for sure for them, it'll be much, much better. And then the Gemara quotes another story, that when they came to Har Tzefim, Mount Scopus, from over there they were able to see the Churban, the destruction, the Beis Hamikdash, how it was destroyed. They tore their garments, as the law in Shulchan Aruch till today, that when you come to the place of the Churban, you should rip your clothes. And then again, the same story happened, that they cried, and Rabbi Akiva laughed. And when they asked Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? He said, why are you crying? And they said, look, we're taking a look over here at the Beis Hamikdash, and we see that from the Kodesh HaKodashim, from the place of the Holy of Holies, there's a fox that's coming out from over there. This is the place that even a Kohen is not permitted to go in over there. Even the Kohen Gadol, is not permitted to go in there, only on Yom Kippur. It's the Holies of Holies. And over here, a fox is coming out of the place of Holy of Holies. Shouldn't we cry? And to this, Rabbi Akiva answered, this is the reason I'm laughing. Because there's the prophecy that the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed and will be plowed, and Shu'alam Halcham Bay, that the foxes will go there. And then there's the prophecy that there'll come the time that the elders and the young will dance in the streets of Yerushalayim. Since I see that the prophecy of the Beis Hamikdash being plowed and the foxes going there was completed, that this prophecy happened, so I know that the other prophecy will also happen. And to this, the colleagues of Rabbi Akiva said, you have consoled us, and they accepted Rabbi Akiva's way of thinking in regards to the tragedies which they had seen. And to this, the Rebbe expounds upon the conclusion of this Masechta in many places at length. But just a little point, especially connected with the Yohrzeit.
the Rebbe explains that Rabbi Akiva's look at things was that one needs to look at the whole picture and what will be at the end and how it applies even now. And therefore, when Rabbi Akiva's colleagues took a look and saw the Churban, they saw the destruction, they saw the foxes going out of the Kodesh HaKadosh, and they saw that the Romans had all their physical things in abundance, they saw what was happening now, that this was a terrible thing and this was a disgrace for Hashem's name. Rabbi Akiva, however, saw that because of this, it'll be much better for the Jewish people. And therefore, seeing what will come out and what the purpose of it was, in order that the Jewish people, as explained, that when you take a field and you plow it, that's what it says about the Beis Hamikdash, that it was plowed. When you take a field and you plow it, so then it grows much, much more. And so also that through the Churban, the Jewish people will receive much, much more than they had before the Churban, before the destruction. So Rabbi Akiva, seeing the end view, what will be at the end, said that this is great news for the Jewish people, and therefore he was happy for the great news which would come. And as we find that there was the famous saying of Rabbi Akiva, Kol man da'avid, and Tavin Navid, that everything that Hashem does is for the good, which this was similar to another one of the Talmudic that said that Gam Zula Teva, also this is for the good, and it's explained the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Nachim Ish Gamzu, that Nachim Ish Gamzu saw the good right away, it was in the open, and Rabbi Akiva, you had to see later when the good would come out. And over here also Rabbi Akiva saw that later, even though that now it didn't look good, but later it would be good, was happy with the outcome that would come later. Which this is also connected with the observance of mitzvahs. That sometimes you could perform a mitzvah now, however, you'll be missing the extra, which could come if you'll do the mitzvah later. And therefore there's a debate. Is it better to do the mitzvah now, but not have the cream on top for later, or to wait and do the mitzvah later, but get the cream on top? Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that you wait until later and you get the cream on top, because then the mitzvah is more complete, even though that you could do the mitzvah now. If you'll delay it a little bit, you'll be able to accomplish much more at a later time. As Rabbi Schusterman mentioned over here before, my father wasn't always known for his time, to be his punctual time, but this included that in order to perform the mitzvah in a better way, to accomplish more within that mitzvah, sometimes it took more time to get to the end result. And when you see the end result, you know that even though that the mitzvah, so to say, could be done now, but later you'll be able to accomplish more through the mitzvah. You delay the mitzvah and do it at a later time in order to be able to fulfill that mitzvah completely. And this is done through the way of Rabbi Akiva, that's done b'simcha, it's done happily. As Rabbi Akiva laughed, he was happy about the results that will be later. For when one does a mitzvah, even though that perhaps it looks not the way it should be, but when one does it, he does it b'simcha, he does it happily, he accomplishes to be able to do the mitzvah in a more complete way. Which this is also connected with the Kapitel Tilim, which we say, the Rebbe's Kapitel Tilim, which begins now, the 15 Shir HaMalos, which correspond to the 15 steps that were in the Beis Hamikdash, where the Levim sang the song, which we learn now in Chumash, that the Nesiim brought the sacrifices. And part of it was that the wagons they brought for the Levim to carry the Mishkan, which begins with Shir HaMalos, a song, which this represents happiness. However, if you take a look to the end of the kapitel, the end of the psalm, we speak about Hey Malamachama, that they want to do war. Mishtava Melech says that I want to go with peace, but they want to go war. Which this the Rebbe explains is the struggle of a Yid, that a Yid says you can't rely on the miracles, and therefore you have to see to it to do it in the most peaceful way, meaning to observe mitzvahs in the most peaceful way. However, sometimes Hashem comes and puts a monkey wrench, and then it becomes a struggle. So when a person has the shira malis, when he does it b'simcha, he does it with happiness. So even though sometimes the struggle comes in, the Jew persuades and fulfills the mission, and sometimes a little late, but at the end completes the mission and brings about that we should fulfill the last mitzvahs which we need to complete to rebuild the third Beis Hamikdash, and then we'll have a kitzav v'ran and sheikh niyafer v'hu b'seicham. And we'll go to the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, where we'll climb the steps in the Beis Hamikdash, saying the Shir Amalis, as we began already with the first Shir Amalis in the Kapitel Kuf Chav. We merit to have this, the revelation Mashiach, and the Rebbe takes us out of Galus now, L'chaim. We'll complete now the Hadrin, followed the Kaddish in a moment. Bear with me. Hadrin lachem zakes nach lachem zakes nach Yiras mufana Hadrin no believe say no. There's days and say no believe that they man on Bach and Papa Nachman Papa Achmar Papa Nachman Papa Nachman Papa so Papa Papa I have not so you know nachn say no say come so pull me the schmachel lim so schmachel mir tach meni mit zeh ki lelam hili sam zeh lam lam yom khisani barcha ta din lam din khaka amin salavad made the manachon sanach adin le hey no they say no there's something can make sure with some measure something can make sure grants ana mashkim he mashkim they say mashkim var matel ana melam he melam kam sagar he kam sagar ana rots me rots ana rots me khaylan ba beim rots me shach shnem vat the him there dam baqi rots me khanacha adinoy lihai kishim shazan the simon sagt markus kennt es hasken sagt das war machen simon nam nicht mehr das kein es called you some sacha bava schus called tonight va mit rein tamil kham yan lidl zari they tam shatem vi zari mata delam is kein bi sacha tan ka is shach tish mer la khav es ki sacha ki bi sacha mi sif khash time erech yam mina mismel shakaved adinoy ez liyama yitain adinoy yivarech esamay Hashalom, Kaddish, Rabbanan. Wait a minute. Ready? Yiskadal, Yiskadash, Shemei Rabba, V'alma, Divrach, Yerusei, V'yamlich, Malchusei, V'yatzmach, Porkanei, V'yikarei, Mishichei, V'chayechainu, V'yamechainu, V'chayei, D'chol Beis Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman, Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shmei Rabba, Mevarach, L'yalam, L'almei, Almaya. Yisbarech, Vishtabach, Visbaer, Visrimam, Visnasei, Visadar, Visalev, Vishalal, Shmei, Likocha, Brichoho, Leila, Minkal, Bichasa, Vishirasa, Tishbechasa, Venechemasa, Namiran, Bialma, Vimro, Amen, Al Yisrael, Varabanan, Val Tamidein, Valkol, Tamidei, Samidein, Kol mandas kim veraisa divasra hadain divasar vasar Yehelai nalchain shlomara bachina v'chista v'rachum chaynari chinum zaynarvicha Uferkan amikal mavoin bishmaya vimro amen Yehei shlomara v'min shemaya Chayim teivim aleinu v'alko Yisrael vimro amen Shalom Rema, V'yatz Shalom Aleinu, V'al Yisrael, V'imro, Amen.
Huh? Okay. Okay. Oscar? Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll be davening Ma'ariv right now, a few minyanim. And dessert is being served on the woman's side. We'll be showing the video presentation right after Ma'ariv. If everybody could just hold on and we'll split up the minyanim properly, and then we'll resume with the Farbrengen.
bist du. Dora getreihe, dein Liebschaft zu uns, ist doch eine Schale.
I had never, ever, ever met anyone like Rabbi Levitansky. I was living a completely different life. At the time, I had no exposure to Yiddishkeit on any level whatsoever. Orthodox, Reform, Hasidish, Misnagdish, Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, nothing. So Rabbi Levitansky was one of the very first poster children for the Rebbe that I ever met. I had never, ever had an impression of anyone like Rabbi
I met Rabbi Levitansky through my old boss, John Hammerman, when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. This was back in '93.
I met Rabbi Levitansky
at all. Orthodox, Reform, Hasidish, Misnagdish, Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, nothing. So poster children for the Rebbe that I ever met. I had never had an impression of anyone like
I met Rabbi Levitansky through my
I had never had an impression of anyone like
when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. Old boss, this was back in when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. This was back in
Hasidish, Misnagdish, Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all. Orthodox, Reform, Levitansky served for the Rebbe that I very first children for the Rebbe that I ever met. I had never had an impression of anyone like Rabbi Levitansky through my I had never had an impression. I had no exposure to anyone whatsoever. This was back in no exposure to conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox Reform, Hasidish, conservative reform affiliated at all. Children for the Rebbe that I ever met. I had never had an impression of anyone like Levitansky through the Rebbe that I ever met. I had never had an impression of anyone like Levitansky I had no exposure to whatsoever at all. Orthodox Reform, Hasidish, conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox Reform, Hasidish, conservative for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression. I had no exposure whatsoever. Orthodox had no exposure conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox Reform, Hasidish, conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox Reform, for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like whatsoever. I had never had no exposure whatsoever at all. Orthodox had no exposure conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox reform conservative for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of no exposure whatsoever at all. Orthodox had no exposure conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox reform conservative reform affiliated at all. Orthodox reform for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like for the Rebbe that I had never had an impression of anyone like
Tate, bist du Gora getreihe, dein Liebschaft zu uns ist doch eine Schale.
I had never, ever, ever met anyone like Rabbi Levitansky. I was living a completely different life. At the time, I had no exposure to Yiddishkeit on any level whatsoever. Orthodox, Reform, Hasidish, Misnagdish, Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, nothing. So Rabbi Levitansky was one of the very first poster children for the Rebbe that I ever met. And I had never impression ever met
I met Rabbi Levitansky through my old boss, John Hamburger, when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. This was back in 94.
I met Rabbi Levitansky in 1971 when I was 9 years old.
Orthodox, Reform, Rabbi Levitansky, Conservative,
I'm very
affiliated
at
first, nothing.
Poster children pick up for me like the cab.
Very first,
I had no idea what was
I
flying.
met Rabbi Levitansky through my
The other kid along the
old
way.
boss, John Hamburger, when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. This was back in 94. This was back in 94.
Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, Orthodox, poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever met any poster children
Through my old boss, John Hamburger, when I worked for him as a mortgage broker in Beverly Hills. This was back in 94.
Conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, affiliated at all, poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever met any poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever met any poster children whatsoever. I had never, Orthodox, concerning whatsoever.
This was back in
Orthodox, conservative, affiliated at all, Orthodox, poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever met any poster children whatsoever. I had never, ever Orthodox, whatsoever.
this was back in
Orthodox, concerning whatsoever. Orthodox, concerning affiliated all Orthodox, poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever any poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever any poster children whatsoever. I had never, Orthodox, concerning whatsoever. Orthodox, concerning affiliated all Orthodox, poster children for the Rebbe. Poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever any poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, Orthodox, concerning whatsoever. I had never, Orthodox, concerning whatsoever. All Orthodox, concerning affiliated all Orthodox, poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever any poster children for the Rebbe. I had never, ever any poster children concerning whatsoever. I had never, Orthodox, affiliated at all with Orthodox and most conservative or affiliated at all with Orthodox and